What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday edition of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me on this, it's pretty dreary outside. I don't know what the weather like is by you. We're on the same coast, obviously. You're a wee bit north, but it's kind of dreary. It's cold. It's rainy. How you doing today?
Doing well. Yeah, it's been snowing or freezing rain here for like a week, which is kind of nice in a sense because I think we had one snowstorm from November through early January, which is unusual here. So nice to get a bit of snow on the ground, get some backyard rinks going, but we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk DFS. And before we do that, let's talk about last night because our very own Mr. Harris put together a winning lineup in the 333 for 20K over on DraftKings, and he did so sitting in a movie theater waiting for the new Avatar to start. I guess that just goes to show the tools can be helpful when you're running a single lineup, and you got to get your lineups in there. So, congrats to you first and foremost, and why don't you tell us about it?
I think the bigger feat here is making it through Avatar. That movie was 3 weeks long. It was actually pretty good. No reason for it to be 3.5 hours long. But yeah, I was sitting in the movie theater waiting for it to start. We got there a little early. Decided to build a lineup. I talked a little bit about it, a little bit more than a little bit in the Discord about my process and all that. We don't really have time today to get into that full deal, but maybe on a shorter slate we can. Also, our boss, Jake Harry, won the 5 last night. 150 max. We are different types of players. He's a 150 max player. I'm a single entry player. Not comparable. And now I'm turning colors.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Remember when you turned green last year? Now I'm turning blue.
You're purple on my screen.
Yeah.
Like 1980s Los Angeles Kings purple. I guess that'd be Los Angeles Lakers purple, but
not exactly sure what's going on there. I did not do anything, but
yeah, me neither. I don't know. You can jump out and jump back in, and I can get it started real quick if you want to try.
Can you handle this? All right, hold on. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So Josh is going to try to figure out his purple eater problem. Just want to mention to everybody that we are sponsored by Prize Picks. We do have a special little giveaway through Prize Picks. Josh will talk about a little bit later in the show. Please give us a like and a subscribe while you're here if you haven't done so already. We have Josh back, and we also have over 40 people in the chat. So if you could just throw us a thumbs up, click that like button, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell so you do get alerts whenever we do go live. And don't forget that if you can't catch this show or any other show besides the Live Before Locks, they are posted to the platform of your choice in podcast form. So you're on the go somewhere, can't watch us, just fire up Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever you use, and you can check us out there. You can even listen to us at 1.5x, like a lot of people do apparently, which makes me want to talk a little bit slower. But Josh is back here, so welcome back. We should probably get right into these games because we got 13 of them to talk about.
Yeah, just quick programming note. As you know, we didn't have a show yesterday. We will be doing shows for slates with 6 games or more now. Can't state how important it is to smash that like button, subscribe, like the show, share it with your friends, your cousins, your nephews, your uncles, your former roommates. It helps us bring you these free shows. Another quick note. What I was saying about Jake, 150 max and me single entry. 150 max is a skill. Don't think that with 150 lineups you can just click optimize and you're going to win. It is, to be good at it, you have to be skillful with an optimizer. You just can't click optimize and do it, which is why why we promote all these tools. Like, there's no secret formula that we use. You know what I mean? There's not like like a robot clicking software or something like that. We use the tools that when we build the lineup, we use the lineup builder, the projections, the top stacks. Those are the tools that we use. There's nothing secret here. Jake's spitting lies in the chat. Not true. Anyone can win with 150. Yeah, you can cash 150 for min cash and you'll have $8 of sweet profit. But yeah, winning a GPP 150 max, not as easy as it sounds. But yeah, all the tools that we show off on the site are the tools that we use. There's nothing, behind the curtain. This isn't the Wizard of Oz. We try to be as, what's the word? I forget the word.
We're forthright with everything we do. We use the tools that we offer on the site. We use the lineup builder. We use the plays that we use. Like, if anybody reads my articles and then looks at my single lineup that night, you'll probably see anywhere from like 2 to 6 players from my article in my single entry lineup. We play the guys that we play and we use the tools that we offer. It's just that simple.
Transparency. Thank you, Vots. That's why Vots writes the articles and I'm just the guy pulling the strings over here. But yeah, looked like I was milking a cow. I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me? Anyway, let's get into the slate.
Yes, please start.
13 game slate. Looking through this slate, there are only a few expensive spots. So there's going to be a lot of like these mid-range like builds on DraftKings with like $17,000, $18,000 lines. And that's why you see some really heavy ownership on these certain lines, which we'll get to. So spending up on, I think there's like 3 or 4 lines above 20,000 tonight, and that's it. So, and they're all with positive leverage. So maybe, spending up in those spots could be a way to get unique tonight. But let's start to break it down. Not a breath. First game of the night, the Winnipeg Jets with a 2.7 total heading into Toronto. The Maple Leafs have a 3.3 total. Connor Hellebuyck, Ilya Samsonov are confirmed. Rick Bowness going full Galaxy brain after losing to the Habs. Pierre-Luc Dubois is with Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. Mark Scheifele is with Nikolai Ehlers and Morgan Barron. Cole Perfidi down on the third line. Now, with those 2 lines, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on who do you think the Matthews line is going to go out against, because I kind of have some interest in that line because the Tavares Marner Yonkrock line has been very, very good defensively. Now, the Matthews line isn't awful defensively, but they're pretty high event. And as we've stated ad nauseum on this show, the Toronto issue has been in net. Their goaltending has been very up and down this season. So, And then you see on the Leafs side, not too much ownership for even a really big slate on the Leafs here. But going into Connor Hellebuyck, not exactly ideal. But I think, as it stands, Toronto 1's my favorite line on the slate. I will say, before I kick it to you, the flow chart has been firing on all cylinders, and this would be a perceived tough matchup. So I guess the flow chart says play Winnipeg.
Yeah, I don't know. What I'm going to do is I looked to last year because Winnipeg was in Toronto in March last year, and they had a lineup somewhat similar to this. Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler were playing with Zach Sanford, not Kyle Connor. Obviously, that's a pretty big difference. And then Mark Scheifele was playing with Paul Stastny and Nikolai Ehlers. So you had Wheeler and Dubois on one line, and you had Ehlers and Scheifele on another. And Matthews went out against the Ehlers and Scheifele line. Now, like I said, Kyle Connor makes a pretty big difference instead of having Zach Sanford there. So maybe they do go in that direction. But I assume it's going to be Scheifele because unless you're basically Alex Ovechkin, teams like to match up against the best center from the other team. And that would be Scheifele over a PLD. I mean, make whatever arguments you want for either player, but I think most NHL coaches would look at Scheifele as the team's top center. So I assume it's going to be Matthews against Scheifele, and then Tavares against the PLD line. I'm going to be honest. I had a little bit of interest in Ehlers, Connor, and PLD, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now that these lines are broken up, I have no interest in either Winnipeg line, really. Like Morgan Barron is the definition of, like, think of Evgeny Svechnikov on the second line for Winnipeg last year. He was there for like half the season and had like 4 points. He's literally just a guy. And the Winnipeg coach, Rick Bowness, said specifically that the lines might change pretty quickly into the game. So who knows what the Winnipeg lines are going to look like, in the third period, let alone, the end of the first or early in the second or something like that. So I'm out on Winnipeg. For Toronto, like the top line really hasn't been playing that well. That was something we mentioned on the last show. Like I know Willie Nylander, I think, had 2 goals and an assist in the last game or something like that. That'll happen because these guys are really so talented. But on a slate with 26 teams on it, this line, 3.2 expected goals for, 2.5 expected goals for in nearly 100 minutes since Christmas. That's really not that great. Michael Bunting, now that he's lost his top power play role and losing all those minutes, he only has 9 shots in his last 5 games. And you have Connor Hellebuck in net, and it's a bad power play spot because Winnipeg doesn't take very many penalties. They're one of the 5 or 6 lowest penalized teams in the league, and they have a very good penalty kill. And again, they have Connor Hellebuck in net. I'm going to be honest. I don't have a lot of interest in stacking either side here.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a route you can go here. Like Leafs total 3.3 is low for them. Matthews is having a good season for a top line center, but it's not a good season for Matthews, I would say. They should put Marner back with Matthews and that line cooks, but it is what it is. Rick Bowness is also a clown, but I feel like Ehlers will be back with Dubois and Connor at some point during the game. It's just hard to, put over $20,000 together on DraftKings and hope that happens in a 2.7 total. You know what I mean? So yeah, there are better spots on both sides. Let's move on to the next one. Florida Panthers with a 3.8 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.7 total. Sergei Bobrovsky and Samuel Dikembe Mutombo are confirmed. Montreal still rolling with those weird old lines, but it could be 11-7, could be 12-6. The one thing, I think Matheson's back on power play 1, which is nice. You see really heavy ownership on this Florida second line in the lineup builder. It's the Barkov line. Over 17%. I guess that's fine because you get, 2 of the guys on the top power play unit, and this is a very good power play spot. But as we've talked about ad nauseum, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk at 5-on-5 have been ridiculously good. And with Doc not on the line with Suzuki and Caulfield, there isn't any resistance defensively for this team. So if I'm going to go to the Florida Panthers line, which I very well may be because it's a 3.8 total and it's an excellent spot, I'm going to the lower ownership here just because better line 5-on-5. You still get Tkachuk on the power play, who's always involved on the power play. Bennett and Tkachuk have ridiculous numbers together. Throw in Verhaeghe. They're one of the best 5-on-5 lines in the league. Like if they started shooting a little bit better than league average, they would be chalk tonight for sure. On the Montreal side, Panthers are pretty leaky, so I think you can, get to, some of these power play guys Cole Caulfield one-off always in play.
Yeah, I wrote up Florida to the Florida second line, the Tkachuk Bennett Verhaeghe line in the picks article, free to read for anybody to head on over to Stokastic.com and check out what we have up there. One of the things that I mentioned, and specifically talking about that line and Matthew Tkachuk, is how much ownership is coming in on here. Like, that's one thing that you talked about, but this line with the Tkachuk line has been so good, right? 4.3 expected goals for, 3.9 actual goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. Those are just great offensive numbers. Controlling over 61% of the expected goal share. Like, they're just running over the opposition. The one thing that kind of works against them here is Kirby Dach has been largely moved away from the Caulfield Suzuki line. He's been playing with Mike Hoffman down on that second line. Kirby Dach's easily been their best defensive forward this year. So he brings a much better defensive presence to that second line. And him and Hoffman, considering how bad this team is, when those two are on the ice together, they're break even by expected goal share. Like, in a nutshell, that's not great considering that they're playing for the Montreal Canadiens with the way this team is playing this year. That's excellent. So it's a bit of a tougher matchup for that Florida second line, but like we just saw them roll over Toronto, right? Like, they've been just demolishing the opposition. So I really do like Florida 2 here, but the Florida top line, I think, is in the better quote spot. Like, Caulfield and Suzuki in their last 60 minutes without Kirby Dach beside them, 29% expected goal share. That would look bad on Anaheim, let alone Montreal.
It's like one of the worst numbers you ever seen, not with Tanner Glass on it,
Right. And one of the reasons is because, they do try so many different things in the offensive zone. They're prone to turnovers and rushes against, and they're not particularly good defensively. So it's a much better 5-on-5 matchup for the Florida top line. I think what I would do, like, I don't even mind taking out Bennett and putting in Barkov instead and just going like Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Tkachuk. Or if you want to just, power play stack with Tkachuk, Reinhart, and Barkov, I think that's fine as well. Like, there are a bunch of ways to stack this Florida top six, especially with Montreal being one of the most penalized teams over the last 6-7 weeks. They're one of the 5 or 6 most penalized teams in hockey over the entire season and over the last 6 weeks. The penalty kill is still bad. But like you said, on the Montreal side, Florida does take a ton of penalties in their own right. Like, I think they're only behind Arizona in time short. Actually, they're just ahead of Arizona now in time shorthanded per game, the most penalized team in the league. Mike Matheson's back on the top power play unit. Caulfield and Suzuki do play on the power play, but it brings some power play exposure to that second line with Dach. So you can do like a 2-man of like Dach and Hoffman, even though only one of them's on the power play or something like that. So I think it's the power play guys that would focus on either side here. I really do like that Florida line with Tkachuk, Bennett, and Verhaeghe. They've been playing extremely well, and I think it's worth stacking the 3 of them just because Verhaeghe's coming in so much lower owned than the rest of the guys. Like, Tkachuk's double digits, Barkov is over 20%, like Sam Reinhart is the upper teens, and then Verhaeghe's under 6%. He's on like a 40-goal pace this season. He's an excellent offensive player, even if he doesn't get top power play time. So I stack the Panthers power play guys, but I would probably leave Verhaeghe in the build.
Yeah. Panthers, interesting chalky spot here. I think I would rather play them than some of the other chalky spots that we have that we'll get to later, which we will mention. But let's get to the next one here with the total trending downward all day. Boston Bruins with a 2.8 total. Heading into New York, the Rangers also have a 2.8 total. When I was doing the run sheet a few hours ago, this total was 6. Now it's trending down to 5.5. Jeremy Swayman, Igor Shesterkin probable. Bruins are back-to-back on the road. They played last night. They beat the Islanders. Interestingly enough, Igor Shesterkin very cheap tonight. I don't know. Like, Kreider's back, but I don't really want to be going up against Bergeron. The thing is, like, Swayman has not had a good season, and the Rangers' ownership is pretty low. I'm not saying 1 to 3 because I think there are a ton of better spots here, but in MME, getting a little bit over the field doesn't take much on the Rangers here, and this could be a nice low-owned spot for them.
The thing about Swayman is that he has been a lot better of late. His last 10 starts, .923 save percentage, which is a sharp distinction from what he did through the first 6 weeks of the season. Like, I'm going to save time here. I don't have any interest in either side, like none.
Yeah.
It's a terrible matchup for the Rangers. And Boston having Craig Smith on the top line, like, he's a 9% shooter, and he's not even shooting that much of late. Like, I think he has 4 shots in his last 4 games, despite quite a bit of run on the top line here. Just really, and they're playing back to back. They played yesterday against the Islanders. So how much ice time they're actually going to get, I think, is a little bit up in the air. Like, if you want to one-off some guys, like, I think I would one-off guys from the Rangers side, just because the Bruins do take a fair amount of penalties. They're at 3.5 times shorthanded per game. That's, quite a bit above the league average. But both penalty kills have been excellent lately. So both penalty kills have been excellent. The Rangers have been quietly pretty good for several weeks now. Like, I'm going to save time. I just don't have any interest in any forwards here.
Yeah. 1 to 3, absolutely not. 20 max, maybe not. But if you get them organically into your lineup through your whatever optimizer, fantasy crunch, or whatever you use, I think I wouldn't, X them out if I was getting 3%. If I was getting like 28%, then I would have some issues with the machine. But yeah, like a one-off Kreider is all right, a one-off Panarin, something like that. Like, I just don't think I'd full stack anything on either side. Let's get to a stretch of games which are just absolute barn burners and make my brain want to melt. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.5 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 3.6 total. Peter Mrazek, Carter Hart confirmed. At the beginning of the day, I was like, we've talked about how the Blackhawks have a pretty good power play, and this could be a sneaky power play spot. But then I realized that the Flyers have the only redeeming quality the Flyers have, really, besides Travis Konechny, is the penalty kill. So that takes me out on the Blackhawks, really. Like, I have almost no interest in the Blackhawks. On the Flyers side, I don't know if I really want to stack anything, but if I were, it would be the Frost Van Riemsdyk line. Otherwise, I think Travis Konechny is still a fine one-off. He's not getting ownership again.
Yeah, I think the last time the Blackhawks were on the slate, we had a show. One thing we talked about, and I think that was against Buffalo. One thing we talked about was that Chicago actually does have a good power play, and not a good power play for Chicago, like a good power play, just generally speaking, comparing them with other top power plays across the league. Like, obviously they're not Buffalo or Dallas or something like that, but they're still pretty good. But like you said, Philly's penalty kill over the team's last 20 games, the fewest shots against per minute of any team in the league. And like, it's not really close. It's 3.3 shots fewer than Boston. It's the only thing that'll let the Flyers down on the penalty kill is their goaltending. The goaltending is what it is. Carter Hart certainly struggled since his hot start, but it's the Chicago Blackhawks. Like, again, the Blackhawks is a side I just don't have interest in. Sometimes I do have interest in like a one-off Radish or a one-off Kane or something if it's a good power play spot. But this is a bad power play spot for the Blackhawks. I have no interest in their forwards. On the Flyers side, I wrote up Morgan Frost in the Power Plays article today. The top line, I call it the top line. It's not really the top line, but Frost, Tippett, and James Van Riemsdyk, almost 100 minutes since Christmas, outplaying the opposition, over 50% by expected goal share. That's pretty good for a Flyers team. Owen Tippett has 19 shots in his last 5 games. There's the line is split across the 2 power plays, but that secondary power play does get some time. It's not like a Toronto situation where the top power play almost plays the entire 2 minutes. So I kind of like that Tippett, Frost, Van Riemsdyk line for the Flyers. I was looking at our top stacks tool before we came on the show. 1.8% ownership. Like, they don't have a high top 2 stack probability, 1.2%, but they're only 13K. Like, they're one of those cheap filler lines that isn't coming in with a ton of ownership. Like the Kings top line is more than double the ownership. The New Jersey second line that we'll talk about later is a little bit more expensive, but more than double the ownership. The St. Louis second line that we'll talk about in a little bit, about the same price, triple the ownership. Like, give me the line that's at home against a very, very bad defensively Chicago team, both at 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill. And I'll take the line that's only $13K on DraftKings. That has, every player's a part of one of the power play units. I think Philly won that Tippett Van Riemsdyk Frost line is maybe my favorite filler line on the slate. If not, it's right near the top. So Tippett Van Riemsdyk Frost. If you want to use one of the other Flyers lines, I'm not going to say no. I think all the Flyers are definitely in play. But it's Frost, JVR, and Tippett that I like. It's a function of their price and their ownership.
Yeah, and Hayes coming off a hat trick will probably get a little bit of ownership just by looking at his game log. But Van Riemsdyk,
Top Stacks has that line over 2 times the ownership, and they're virtually the same price. There's $100 difference. So, and they have the Hayes line is a little bit more likely as the top 2 stack. That'll happen. I'd rather save on the ownership.
Yeah, there just isn't a massive discrepancy in the projection of these lines.
No.
And the connecting line obviously is going to project the best because Travis Konechny's on it, but they're obviously more expensive. The Frost line to the Hayes line projects very similarly, and you get more guys on the power play, and this is a very good power.
It's a 3.6 total, and they're not the quote top line is coming in under 2% owned at home. It seems like a pretty easy play to me.
I agree. It always feels some type of way clicking Flyers into your lineup on a 13-game slate, but sometimes you just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Anyway.
I like that.
Yeah. Never mind. We don't have time for my ridiculousness. We can get you 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, and your first bet is covered up to $1,000 in first bet insurance when you sign up, make a deposit, and make your first paid wager at BetMGM. Now, here's the important thing here. If you live in Ohio, Maryland, Illinois, Kansas, or Louisiana, this deal expires tomorrow, and it's not coming back. So take advantage of this while you can. There's no better way to beat the books than taking advantage of these deals. It's one of the best. It is the best way to do it. So click the link in the description below, or use promo code PlatinumSub, but we always prefer you clicking the link in the description below and follow the instructions. If your first bet loses, you'll get paid back in site credit equal to the amount of your first wager up to $1,000. $10 minimum for this to work. And then you'll get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum once your bet settles, and you'll get an email from BetMGM about that. Also, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the next game. I'm trying to hold in a sneeze here. It is not going too well. Minnesota Wild with a 2.4 total. Going into Carolina, the Hurricanes have a 3.1 total. Marc-Andre Fleury is confirmed. Hurricanes are still have 3 goalies on the active roster. Freddie Anderson is probable in the lineup builder, but I'm sure we'll get news before lock, and it's a 7 p.m. Eastern game there. Looks like Max Pacioretty is back, and he's also on the top power play unit. He'll slide into that top line with Aho and Jarvis. Second line is Stastny, Netchis, and Svechnikov. The stall line is the stall line. This is just a brutal matchup for Minnesota. This is actually kind of a brutal matchup both ways. Minnesota has been very good defensively. They're also healthy scratching Matt Dumba for Alex Goligoski today. I guess it's a play issue. I'm pretty much out on the Wild here. If you want to have some Kaprizov, Zuccarello, go for it. This, I just do not want top lines going into Carolina. It's just a miserable matchup. If anything, I'm probably going to that Pacioretty line, assuming they avoid the draw action neck line. I kind of I know they send out the stall line against top comp, and then
not anymore.
No, they're sending out
it's been a few games now. They've used Aho and Jarvis against the top comp. So, I'll just take it from there.
No, I'm just gonna say, like, I was mulling it over with a sip of water, and that makes me interested even more in the Pacioretty line. I was gonna like them anyway, but now that if they're gonna go into Kaprizov, Zuccarello, if there is a perceived soft spot defensively for that team, it is that Steel line.
Yeah, with Pacioretty back, I assume Jarvis, Aho, and Pacioretty will be going out against that Zuccarello, Steel, Kaprizov line. Like I said, the last few games at home, Carolina has been using the Stahl line against opposing second lines and using the Aho against the top line. I don't know why, but that's just what they've been doing. So we got to assume that they're going to keep doing it. That Minnesota top line, their defensive numbers have been sliding basically since the first couple weeks of Sam Steele getting there. And they played nearly 100 minutes together since Christmas. 2.6 expected goals for, 3.0 expected goals against. That is very poor defensive performance, and maybe might be why Matt Dumba's getting scratched, because he's not playing that well either. What's saving them is super elite goaltending. I think it's over the last 5 weeks or 6 weeks, Minnesota is number one in save percentage at 5-on-5, which is something that blew me away. I would have guessed it was Nashville, but Nashville's, I think, is right behind them. But Philip Gustafsson has been playing extremely well of late, but it is Marc-Andre Fleury in net tonight. That changes things a little bit for me. Fleury has had some pretty good games recently. He had a real good shutout loss against the Rangers, but his season hasn't been that solid, like maybe average at best. And with Pacioretty, Aho, and Jarvis going into that top line that has been performing poor defensively, that is putting in what I think is their weaker goalie right now anyway, Marc-Andre Fleury, I don't mind Aho, Jarvis, and Pacioretty in this matchup. I think it's a good matchup at 5-on-5. Not so much on the penalty kill. Minnesota doesn't take a ton of penalties, but you're getting good leverage with that Carolina line. 6.4% top two stack percentage by our top stacks tool, only 3.4% ownership on DraftKings. So they are coming in with positive leverage. They're I think they're 7th by positive leverage in the top stacks tool. So I do like Pacioretty, Aho, and Jarvis. I just worry, is Pacioretty only going to play like 13 minutes as they ease him back in or something like that? Maybe Teravainen takes some shifts on that line just to kind of spell off Pacioretty. That's one of the things I'm worried about. So if it's something that would concern you, I think that's a reason not to play them. But other than that, like Aho and Jarvis play extremely well together going back to last season. They had a good sample with Pacioretty in his 3.5 games when he came back from injury. I do think it's a fine matchup at 5-on-5. So Pacioretty, Aho, and Jarvis is the one line that I do have interest in this game.
Yep, I agree with you. Let's move on to the next one, which I'm having trouble wrapping my brain around. That's why we talk about it. Anaheim Ducks with a 2.9 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 3.6 total. John Gibson probable. Elvis Merzlikins confirmed. Top line for Columbus is back to Gaudreau, Jenner, Line, and they're getting almost 25% projected ownership here. I guess for good reason. The Ducks are just an abomination defensively. They have a terrible blue line. They have a bad penalty kill. Their goaltending is bipolar. I don't know. Like, I understand why they're getting that much ownership, but do I want to eat Columbus Blue Jackets chalk on a 13-game slate? I don't know. And then you look on the flip side, the McTavish, Henrique, Terry line, getting under 5%, just because the Columbus Blue Jackets have a massive total doesn't change the fact that they suck. So, like, I think I actually have more interest on the Duck side here.
I mean, I wrote up Johnny Gaudreau in the picks article because he does project extremely well, right? Like you said, it's a tremendous matchup. Like it is an unbelievably good matchup. But don't forget, we also have Montreal, Chicago, and Arizona on this slate. Like there are a lot of good matchups here. What I did write about with Gaudreau was that Obviously, having Boone Jenner back makes a difference. Like the expected goals generated goes up like 25% when he's playing with Jenner. Like it's a pretty big difference. They're also perfectly correlated on the power play. Anaheim's penalty kill is bad. Jesper Bokvist running the top power play for cheap, so he's a cheap defenseman that you can use now. It's a really good spot for Columbus. There's nothing else to say other than do you want to play him at the ownership that they're likely to come in with? Like you said, top line coming in 24.9% on DraftKings, over on FanDuel 23%. We went through this a couple days ago with Nashville. Remember when Nashville just beat this Columbus team 2-1 and almost nobody amongst their forward group did anything noteworthy in DFS. Columbus is in that spot here today. It's a really good spot for them. They're projecting extremely well. They're perfectly correlated on the power play, all that good stuff. There's the only reason not to play them is because they could be 25% owned in certain GPPs. Like that's the reason not to play them. There's 26 teams on this slate. There's probably 50 some playable lines. This one's coming in at 25%. I think if I lose to Boone Jenner getting a 3-point night here tonight, tip of the cap, I'll wake up tomorrow and go at DFS another day. I'm not playing 25% Columbus top line. It's just the way it is. With you, a little bit of more interest on the Anaheim side. 2.9 expected goals for in their last 80 minutes together. That's actually not bad considering how bad this team generally is. Perfectly correlated on the power play. Columbus has started taking a few more penalties. Columbus is the sixth most time shorthanded over the last 6 weeks. So yes, they are taking a lot more penalties. You get that line perfectly correlated on the power play. I'm with you. I think I would rather play, considering the ownership that we're seeing on DraftKings. I think I would rather play the Anaheim top line than the Columbus top line tonight.
Yeah, and I think if you want to avoid that Columbus chalk and still want to play Columbus, I think one-off and Kirill Marchenko is fine. He's on the top power play. He's on the line with Cole Sillinger and Emil Bemstrom, but he is on the top power play. He's 3,400. He's only getting 6.5% ownership. Seems like he's a pretty good goal scorer, so if you really want to avoid that high chalk and have a one-off on the top power play and a really good power play spot, Kirill Marchenko makes some sense there. But yeah, it's like whenever we get these huge chalky spots on these big slates, like it's a personal tolerance, really. If you want to jam in chalk Columbus, you know what I mean? So that's a choice you have to make. I think they're a fine play. If you take out ownership, you factor in ownership, that's a decision you're going to have to make. Let's move on to the next game. New York Islanders with a 2.9 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3.1 total. Ilya Sorokin, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen confirmed. Oh, no. It's like, why do the Islanders have to have a 2.9 total on the road against Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen on Ryan Miller night? I don't really want to play the Islanders, but Nelson and Lee are in a pretty good spot here. On the flip side, I also don't like stacking against Sorokin, but one of these expensive spots, obviously, is the Buffalo top line, and they're getting no ownership whatsoever. So, if you're MMEing, I would, if I was making 150, I'd make it a note to at least have 5% Buffalo here. They're a line that's, I'm just gonna start calling them matchup proof. Maybe they'll have a bad game here and there, but fully correlated. Islanders are just not good defensively. They've been bailed out by their goaltending, which has let them down recently. So I do really like Buffalo one here tonight.
Yeah, I think Buffalo top line in a perfect spot here with really low ownership, and the Islanders catching the Islanders on a back-to-back, even if Sorokin is in net. Sorokin certainly had his bad games this year. Like he's had a half dozen games with, 4 goals or more, maybe 5 games with 4 goals or more, or something like that. So they absolutely can get there. I imagine they're going to go out against the Matt Barzal line a fair bit as well. We don't even know who's playing with Barzal because they sent down that William Dufour kid who came up and played 3 shifts and then got benched for 40 minutes and then got sent back to the AHL. But Barzal and Bailey without Lee and Beauvillier this year, 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes. That's below league average defensively. Obviously, Ilya Sorokin saving them, so the goals against isn't that bad, but it won't be a good defensive line. So I'm with you. I do like Buffalo 1 here. Here's where my problem comes in is they are like super expensive. They're the second most expensive line on the slate, depending what you do with Edmonton. They could be the most expensive line on the slate. And this is their 8th game in 13 days. That's a lot of hockey. You know what I mean? 8th game in 13 days, you're facing Ilya Sorokin. You're almost, you're what, 47% of the salary cap to use. Like, I get it. I think I'm with you. Even if I was playing 20 lineups tonight, I would probably have maybe 1 or 2 Buffalo in a single entry. It feels really tough to pay up for them when there are 25 other teams on the slate, when they've been playing so much hockey and they're facing one of the best goaltenders in the league. So not going to say no to not playing them because they do have tremendous leverage, second most behind Edmonton here. I just think considering they may be running a little bit ragged, they haven't been playing a ton of late, like under 20 minutes per game over their last 5 games. Without a ton of ice time, facing Sorokin could be tired. I think there are reasons to get away from the Buffalo top line here. I do like the Islanders' second line, that Bailey, Beauvillier, Nelson line. This is a 2.9 total, right? It's not that far off from what they're offering from Buffalo. 2.9 total is higher than the Dallas Stars have. It's higher than Winnipeg has. It's higher than either the Rangers or the Bruins. They're expecting some goals from the Islanders. Lee and Nelson have been playing extremely well of late. 4.2 expected goals for, 2 expected goals against over the last month. That is really, really good production. 3.8 expected goals for in their last 120 minutes together. They've been generating a ton of offense, just not scoring a lot. Buffalo might be tired. Their penalty kill is certainly still very bad. You get Lee and Nelson on the top power play unit. I think my favorite line in this game is the Lee, Nelson, Beauvillier line. I think you can leave Beauvillier off if you want. Just go with a 2-man or add Noah Dobson or something like that. But at the very least, I like Lee and Nelson in this matchup.
Yeah. It's just...
No, I know.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next one, which is another... Nashville Predators with a 3 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.9 total. UC Saros probable. Jordan Bennington confirmed. Blues mixing up their lines. Robert Thomas is now with Brandon Saad and Jordan Kyrou. Pavel Buchnevich is now with Braden Shen and Jake Neighbors. Not Jake from State Farm. Jake, your neighbor, who is not as good as Jake from State Farm. Like, with these Blues lines... Like, this is a good power play spot, and they just messed up their lines. I don't know. Like, I guess I'd go to the Thomas Kyrou Saad line, but like I get why they changed their lines. Like, Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou haven't been great over the past few weeks, but I don't know. These iterations don't do much for me. This is a good power play spot, so I guess if you want a power play stack the Blues, you can. UC Saros has been pretty good of late. On the Nashville side, the top line of Duchesne, Glass, Forsberg, like, I'm not sure these Blues lines are going to be good defensively. Like, Saad with Thomas and Kyrou, like, maybe will help him out defensively a little bit, but like, and Buchnevich is a very, very good two-way winger, but like, Shen is awful defensively. Jake Neighbors is a kid. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't see much resistance for this Duchesne-Forsberg pair. They're getting 3%. It's a 3 total on the road. So, like, as much as I hate chalk Nashville, I don't mind them at lower ownership in this spot.
I'm glad you said that because I do like Nashville as well. They're another line I wrote up in the picks article. With Forsberg and Duchesne on the ice, even with Granlund this year, and we've definitely done our fair slandering of Granlund, 3.1 expected goals for, 55% of the expected goal share. It's better than anything St. Louis will be able to do. Glass, we've been extolling Glass's virtues here for quite a while now. He's pretty much had a career renaissance, and he's reestablished himself not only as an NHLer, but could be a productive like middle six type forward as well. He's in a very cushy spot with Forsberg and Duchesne. They're not, and you're right, when they're super chalk a couple games ago, I did not want to play them, but they're not chalk here today. 3.3% ownership per the top stacks tool. They also have a higher top two stack probability than the Jack Hughes line from New Jersey, the Minnesota top line we just talked about, either of the Boston lines that we skipped over, Detroit top line, Tampa second line. Like, there are a lot of good lines that this Nashville Forsberg Duchesne glass line is projecting better than. It's because St. Louis is pretty bad defensively. Kyrou and Sad don't really have much of a sample together, break even by expected goal share in about 50 minutes together. It's not really enough to determine anything, but they're not playing that well. The same thing goes for Buchnevich and Shen, and maybe double the sample. So like maybe they can be average, which I think is the best St. Louis can ask for at this point. And Glass, Duchesne, and Forsberg split across two different power play units, but this isn't a good power play spot. You don't stack against St. Louis because of the power play. Like, St. Louis is the least penalized team in the league. I do like Duchesne, Glass, and Forsberg here today. They're not overly expensive at 15.3. They're not, you can still stack a pretty decent line with them. Like, you can still put like a Tampa Bay or a Florida stack or certainly Carolina or something like that. So it's the Nashville top line I like best in this game. Honestly, I think with St. Louis, I don't mind one-offing some guys. Like, I don't mind a one-off Brandon Saad now that he's playing with Thomas and Kyrou. Like, that's a pretty good duo to be playing with. And Saad's on like a 29-goal pace on his own. Like, he's having a good offensive season. So like one-offing him. If you need a Stoneman punt, Jake Neighbors, I think, is fine as a one-off. Considering once you go into the second and third lines from Nashville, there isn't a tough matchup there to be had. So, I think he's fine if you need a Stoneman winger. But I don't think I'm stacking anything from St. Louis.
Yeah, me either. As we mentioned off the top, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. Click the link in the description below to get 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with Prize Picks. It's a daily prop-based contest. There's no sharks, optimizers, or mass entries, which is good for me because I don't know how to copy and paste from Excel, although I have done it successfully twice. You can use a 5-player lineup, up to a 5-player lineup that can net you your 10, up to 10x your entry fee. Could not spit that out. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sports entries. If you like NBA, you can do it with NBA and NHL. There's NFL playoffs. There's UFC this weekend. So, yeah, you can mix and match there. Click the link in the description below. Get your 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up.
And don't forget, I just want to jump in real quick. There is a player prop tool that we have at Stokastic that you can use for your prize picks. So it can help you pick the best prize picks options that are available. Today we have Brent Burns, Pavel Buchnevich, Matt Duchesne for shots on goal, over and unders. Just a nice little tool to have that you can use alongside your prize picks to try to get the best edge that you can.
There you go. That tool, I use that tool a lot as well. Should have mentioned it. That's why Cliffy is here.
Josh loves using his tools.
I love having Stokastic's tools behind me. Let's move on to the next one. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.2 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oilers have a 3.3 total. Lightning back-to-back on the road. But Moose, Brian Elliott won last night, who was out of his mind, by the way. Andrei Vasilevsky is going to probably start tonight. Jack Campbell is confirmed. Now, the interesting, I don't know if I'd call it interesting, the troubling thing here is the top line for Edmonton. Now, McDavid and Draisaitl were together all of last game, but then Hyman saw some shifts there. Kane saw some shifts there. They practice with Kane up there. So I'm assuming that Draisaitl, McDavid, Kane are going to start. Whether that sticks is another scenario. Kane isn't on the top power play unit, but McDavid and Draisaitl generally play the full 2 minutes, and Kane will come on and play with them. So, I guess you could full stack them. If it is Kane up there, they're 24-7. If it is Hyman up there, they're 25-2 on DraftKings. Not much ownership here. Not the best matchup, I would say. But again, this is Edmonton we're talking about here. McDavid and Draisaitl play so much that they're not always going to have a tough 5-on-5 matchup. Like, they'll get out there against Vladislav Nemestikov or Corey Perry. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I kind of like the Edmonton top line here. And again, they're the most expensive spot on the night. So there is a ton of positive leverage on there. On the flip side, Jack Campbell in net. Edmonton Oilers just not great defensively. I don't mind going back to this Tampa power play where there's no ownership.
Yeah, to your point about the Edmonton lines, they did have Evander Kane on the top line in practice yesterday, but they also had Zach Hyman on the top line in practice the game before that. And this is what Edmonton did in their last game. They started with McDavid playing with Warren Foegele and Evander Kane on his wing. That lasted one shift. And then Draisaitl and Hyman were put together with McDavid for one shift. And then McDavid went and played with Derek Ryan and Evander Kane for one shift. And then Derek Ryan and Warren Foegele went and played with McDavid for one shift. And then after that, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman played 4 shifts together. And then McDavid, Draisaitl, and Kane played 4 shifts together. And then McDavid, Kane, and Ryan played 2 shifts together. And then McDavid, Draisaitl, and Kane had another. Like, McDavid and Draisaitl had like 5 different wingers alongside them. And I think 3 different wingers had at least 4 shifts with them. When they run 11-7, it's just going to be a rotating cast of guys on the top line. So you don't have to go out and play Evander Kane. You can play Zach Hyman. You can throw in a cheap guy like a Derek Ryan if you want. You can even go, again, go triple center or whatever and put in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for power play stacking. They just are really, really expensive, not coming in with much ownership, not really a great matchup either. That Tampa top line, league average defensively of late, which isn't good, but it's certainly not bad. And they've been generating a ton of offense, which means they're really carrying the play at 5-on-5 when they're on the ice, or at least they have been since Christmas. 4.5 expected goals for and only 2.6 against. I don't really have a problem with playing Edmonton here, but I'm going to be honest, considering the ownership rates, I would probably rather just play Tampa Bay back-to-back on the other side. Point, Kucherov, and Hagel, as you mentioned, coming in with almost no ownership on DraftKings here today, under 1%. They're expensive, 20,800, but not super expensive. Perfectly correlated on the power play. Edmonton is one of the most penalized teams in the league. I think they're 6th or 7th at this point. Their penalty kill is still awful. The Tampa Bay power play has really come alive over the last month. I'll never say don't play McDavid or Draisaitl. You can play them literally any slate, literally any matchup. I just think factoring in the cost, factoring in the matchup, factoring in the ownership, I'd rather play the Tampa top line on the other side.
Yep. It's an interesting game.
Yeah.
I kind of like playing both sides here. But again, Edmonton, they do weird things. So move on to the next one. Washington Capitals with a 3.5 total heading into Arizona. The Coyotes have a 2.5 total. Darcy Kemper probable. Karel Vejmelka confirmed. I don't know what Laviolette's doing with his lines. Like, your guess is as good as mine. Strome and Ovechkin's with Nikolai Aube-Kubel. Evgeny Kuznetsov is on the 4th line. Eller is centering Oshie and Shiri. Sonny Milano and Tom Wilson with Backstrom. I guess they're trying to make them 4 playable lines, I guess. It's kind of a pain in the tuchus for DFS. This is a very good power play spot, though. Ovechkin's not getting a ton of ownership. You could one-off Ovechkin here. You could bring him along with an Oshie or a Kuznetsov or a Gustafsson, but I like getting to some Washington here. On the flip side, I don't have a ton of interest in the Coyotes. If you want to get to a little bit of that top line in MME, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I do like the Washington side. I'm with you. It is a really good power play spot. Like you said, 3.7 times shorthanded per game, the second most in the NHL. Power plays given to the opponent just behind Florida. Penalty kills still really, really bad. Arizona giving up the third most shots against on the PK over the last 6 weeks, the most goals against per minute on the PK over the last 6 weeks. So really good spot for Washington. As you mentioned, the problem here is Washington's top power play unit, their 4 forwards, are spread across 4 different lines. So if you want to stack the Washington power play, you have to stack across lines, but that's just fine in a matchup against Arizona. I don't think there's a problem stacking across lines. I think the way I would go is probably putting in Backstrom just because he's so much cheaper than Evgeny Kuznetsov. But I don't think Kuznetsov's going to come in with any ownership here. So I don't mind using him with Ovechkin if you want to. It is the Washington power play guys that I would focus on here. Not only because it's a great power play spot, but because I don't have a ton of confidence that the even strength lines stay together. Like, Nicholas Aubé-Kubel got Boone Jennered last game. Like, right? I think it was the final shift of the second period. He was moved off the top line and then kept off the top line for the rest of the game. Like, you're right. He's doing this to try to give them 4 playable lines, but you don't need that. It's the Arizona Coyotes. You just need to mix. You just need to find good chemistry for your lines for the second half of the season to make sure you make the playoffs, but I'm not a coach. He is. I would just focus on the power play guys here. I don't have a lot of confidence that the even strength lines will stay together. So, 2-man Ovechkin and Backstrom, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, something like that. That's the way I would go here. No real interest in the Arizona side. Second line is really not playing that well. The top line is still playing well, but it's not really a good matchup. Washington doesn't take very many penalties. Arizona doesn't live on the power play, certainly not since Chicken returned. But they, for what meager offense they do produce, they do need some power play to get there. It's not really a good power play spot for them. So if you want to one-off some guys like Barrett Hayton's still really cheap, getting a lot of ice time. I think he's one-offable. Lawson Krause is getting a little bit too expensive for that, but some one-offs maybe from Arizona, but it's the Washington power play that I'm focusing on here.
Detroit Red Wings with a 2.9 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.6 total. Ville Husso and Aiden Hill are confirmed. I was kind of surprised to see the Wings have a 2.9 total. The top line fully correlated, Bertuzzi, Larkin, Raymond. Not a huge fan of stacking against Vegas, but they are banged up. There's no Stone. Aiden Hill in net, not Logan Thompson. Do you have any interest in the Detroit top line here tonight?
I do, because Vegas is so banged up right now. They are still missing Shea Theodore, obviously. That's a big loss off the blue line. They're still missing Zach Whitecloud, who I think is probably their best defensive defenseman. That's a big loss. Obviously, not having Mark Stone is a pretty big deal here. We talked about it on the last show, how Stone really is the engine of the offense on this team. It's not Jack Eichel, it's Stone. He's been really excellent at producing creating scoring chances, for his teammates. Like Jack Eichel this year, without Mark Stone beside him, 2.6 expected goals for. That's basically league average. He's been league average offensively, at least by expected goals, without Mark Stone. I can't imagine Phil the Throw Kessel at the age of 37 or whatever he is now is going to help much. Chandler Stevenson's a good two-way playmaker type, but you can't rely on him to replace Mark Stone in any sense. Like, I don't think that's going to be a very good line for Vegas. The Vegas second line also has not been playing that well recently. Not a huge sample, but about 60 minutes over the last 4 weeks, below average by expected goal share, below average by Corsi share, or shot attempt share, I should say. Really not playing that well. I'm out on Vegas. You said you were shocked to see Detroit with a 2.9 total. I'm shocked to see Vegas with a 3.6 total.
That's fair.
I think the loss of Mark Stone, with all the defensemen that they're missing, I haven't seen anything about Alec Martinez either. He left their last game. I don't know if you've seen anything, but he might be out as well here again tonight. Like, they might honestly be down at least 3 regular defensemen plus Mark Stone plus Aiden Hills in net. Like, come on. I don't really like the Vegas side at all here. I think this is one of the high totals I don't have any interest in personally, not amongst the forwards. It is Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Raymond that I would have interest in. They're still really, really cheap. They're not coming in with any ownership, about 2.5% per the top stacks tool. I don't really care which matchup they get at this point. Neither of the Vegas lines are going to be that good. Or, Vegas 2 is probably going to work themselves out of it, but certainly not playing well right now. I don't have a lot of interest stacking either side, I'm going to be honest. But if you ask me to pick one line out of this game, it's the Detroit top line for me, and it's really not that close.
I think you just talked me into some Detroit. Nice. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Jake and I had some pretty good nights last night, and we used the Stokastic tools. And if you're interested in trying out those tools, we can get you a 5-day free trial of everything we have to offer for NHL. Projections, ownership, top stacks, rankings, Discord, Avery laughing, whatever you want. I think the Discord is very invaluable. We go over lines and all that kind of stuff. The top stacks tool is great. The lineup builder is how we go. The lineup builder is how we go through the show and all that. So, yeah, click the link in the description below. Get access for a 5-day free trial. It'll take you through to the middle of next week. 5 big slates. There's a big slate tonight, obviously. There's a big slate on Saturday. I would imagine there's going to be another big slate on Tuesday, so you'll get access to all of those. Let's move on to the final 2 games of the night. New Jersey Devils with a 3.4 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1 total. Vitek Vanacek is probable. Senor Fiesta, I don't have the horn, but Marty Jones is confirmed. Justin Schultz is out tonight. Carson Soucy taking his spot on the power play. Our boy, he is Min Price. This is interesting. Like, there is not much ownership on either side here, but it is a 6.5 total. Gord Tolvin and Bjorkstrand still wildly cheap. They're getting the most ownership of any of the Seattle lines. They're a good filler. I don't know if you need to be that cheap with not a ton of expensive lines on the slate, but if you are going Edmonton or you are going, Buffalo, I think, the Seattle line is one of the ones that you can use. On the Devils side, like, this is interesting because Palat, Hughes, Tatar not getting any ownership. Brat, Heischer not getting any ownership.
I don't think those are the lines.
No. So, well, anyway, just forget the lines. Lineup builder's off. What I'm saying is the Devils aren't getting a ton of ownership. Seattle's pretty good 5-on-5, but their goaltending has been awful. So, do you have any interest in the Devils?
Yeah, I do. The top line at practice yesterday was Palat, Hischier with Jesper Bratt, and then Haula, Hughes, and Mercer with Tatar down on the third line. But Tatar's still power play 1. So where you're facing the Seattle Kraken that have a really, really bad penalty kill, over the last 6 weeks, Seattle 7th most shots against while on the PK, 9th most goals against per 60 minutes while on the PK. Seattle has a bad penalty kill. Tatar, like I said, still power play 1. So he's definitely still playable. I wrote up Jack Hughes in the picks article today. The guy has 22 goals in his last 24 games, which is just absolutely insane. Like, that's Austin Matthews back in the bubble season towards the end of the year. I think it was a bubble season when he did that. But just an unbelievable tear that Hughes is on. It's some sort of Devils power play stack that I like here. Like, Andre Palat's really not playing a lot per game. Not sure if people have noticed since he returned from injury, but a lot of like 11, 13, 12, 14-minute games, like, you can get there with that ice time at his price. But honestly, I'd rather just pay $500 more for Tatar on the power play. So I think on the New Jersey side, it's probably some sort of power play stack that I like best on the Devils side, because I really don't want to play Tatar. I don't want to play Eric Haula. Like, I don't want to play Dawson Mercer. I want to focus on a bad Seattle penalty kill. So, like, I think you can double center like Hughes and Hischier, and then throw in Brad if you want. I think you can just do like Hughes, Brad, Tatar in a stack across 3 lines if you want. Seattle has been using Gordon Tolvanen as the shutdown line since the Schwartz injury. Schwartz is out again here tonight, so they'll probably go out against Hischier and Brad. That'll leave Hughes against some Seattle lines that, quite frankly, aren't good defensively. And this Seattle goaltending has been very inconsistent this year, so I think it's some sort of Devil's power play stack I like the best. Honestly, I'm not playing Seattle. Like, their percentages are going to have to crash at some point. I know there's not a ton of ownership on them, so if you want to play them because there's not a lot of ownership, I think that's fine. Alex Wenberg's numbers without Schwartz on his wing this year are really bad, like 45% expected goal share bad. The Beniers, Eberle, Burakovsky line, 3.1 expected goals against, but shooting over 18%, so they're looking good. It's the New Jersey side I like here. I think I'm out on Seattle.
Let's get to the last game of the night. The Dallas Stars with a 2.8 total. Heading into Los Angeles, the Kings have a 3.2 total. Dallas played last night. Jake Ottinger played. So Scott Wedgwood is probable. Phoenix Copley confirmed. I kind of have interest in this Velarde Fiala line again. That top line is going to be big.
Out.
What was that?
Velarde's out. So we don't know exactly what the Kings lines are going to be, but practice yesterday had Fiala back on the top line with Kopitar and Kempe, and both Velarde and Carl Grundstrom are out. So I think the best guess is Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala. I have followed Deneau and Arvidsson after that.
Yeah, so there goes my interest really on the Kings. I guess you could go to that top line, especially with Wedgwood and net. I just, I think there's better spots on the Dallas side, back-to-back on the road, end of a long road trip, like with Hintz out for his, 8th straight game or 5th straight game, something like that. I just don't have too much interest in the Stars.
Yeah, the Kings using the Deneau line quite a bit as a shutdown line. 2 expected goals against, 1.4 actual goals against. That's what Pavelski and Robertson are going into. Copley's been playing well. It's just a really, really bad matchup at 5-on-5 for Dallas, so they have to get there on the power play. No Hints on the power play. The Dallas top power play unit over the last couple seasons, their shot attempts go up 40% with Rope Hintz. Like, he's a pretty big cog on that top PP unit. I'm out on the Stars. If anything on the Kings, it would be that Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala line. They have played well offensively at times this year. They're going to get the second line from Dallas, which has been pretty leaky defensively. 3.3 expected goals against since December 1st for that Dallas second line. So Kings top line, I think, is the only thing that I like in this game. Good offensive numbers going back this season. Good matchup at 5-on-5. Dallas has a pretty good penalty kill, but they are above average by penalties taken. So Kings won for me. But they are coming in with a little bit of ownership because they're not super expensive, but it's Kings won here.
Coming up after us, No House Advantage Thursday NBA show at 3:30 with Neil and Terry. 150 of you in here. Please smash that like button. It helps us bring you free shows as much as possible. Let's talk a little bit about D-men. For such a big slate, there aren't many punt defensemen that I really like. I have a list here. I will mention them. Carson Soucy, min price, taking over that secondary power play unit. Okay, it's fine. He's min price. Essa Lindell, 3,400. It's not exactly a full punt, but don't mind him. Nick Hague, 3,600. Our boy Jake Wallman's kind of mid-range at 4,200. Peak for Columbus at 2,800 if you don't want to use Bachwell for 3K. Owen Power and Henry Jokiharju for Buffalo, and Carrier for Nashville. And then another mid-range is Brett Pesce, who should still be power play 1.
Yeah, I'll mention Jonas Brodin as well. With Matt Dumba as a healthy scratch, I think Brodin has a pretty good chance to see some more minutes, and he's been blocking a lot of shots this year. He could be a source of a block shot bonus on DraftKings and obviously can get on the score sheet as well. He's reasonably good offensively. Yanni Hakanpää still playing 19 to 20 minutes for Dallas. 2,600. He's another guy that can get to the block bonus. Dmitry Orlov is a guy I wrote up in the picks article. Even with most of their defensemen back, except for John Carlson, and without top power play minutes, Orlov still leads them in ice time, playing 23 to 24 minutes a game. I think he's one of those mid-fours guys that I would like, along with Jake Wallman. If you want to pay up, Aaron Ekblad, obviously in a really great spot, both 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill for Florida. If you want to get a little bit different, going back to Victor Hedman for the Tampa power play spot, I think is one way to do it. But it's Noah Dobson I kind of like here. Very reasonably priced. The Buffalo penalty kill is really bad, and Dobson can do more than just score. He can block shot. Like I think he has 7 shot bonuses and 9 block bonuses this year from DraftKings. So he can bring it across the board. Don't mind him if you want to pay up.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Yanni Hakanpää. I played Hakanpää last night. Only 1 shot on goal, but we forgive you, Hakanpää. Lots of goalies on the slate. Lots of cheap options on DraftKings. Who are you liking?
Yeah, I'm not paying up on DraftKings. I don't really see the need. Like, there's a triumvirate of goalies at 7,400 or less. Shesterkin, Saros, or Sorokin. All elite goalies, all not really in terrible spots. I know facing Boston isn't great for Shesterkin, but, Boston's back-to-back on the road. Shesterkin's really been playing well. Obviously Saros is there. Sorokin, he can shut down anybody. So I think those are 3 cheap-ish goalies that you can use. If you don't want to play Sorokin, I think Pekka Luukkonen on the other side for Buffalo makes a little bit of sense. Marc-Andre Fleury, 7,100. I really wish Gustafsson was starting, but Carolina, they do take a ton of shots. They do take a lot of shots from the point, which is something that I raised in our Discord yesterday. And if you want to get really cheap and get really wild, slam in Sammy Montembeault for Montreal at 6,900 on DraftKings. He's going to see a lot of volume. He's been playing well lately.
Connor Hellbuck, also 7,100. I think you mentioned him, but just reiterating.
Yeah, no, I think I forgot him, but yeah, thanks for adding that.
Yeah. Also, don't mind if you really want to, go for it here. Andrei Vasilevsky, also 7,500. Should she see a fair volume as well? Who are you liking for your hat trick pick? This is a big slate.
Yeah, and I'm going to go not way off the board, but a little off the board. I'm going with Owen Tippett.
Nice. I'm going to go Tyler Bertuzzi.
Ooh, that would be something against Vegas.
I wasn't sure who I was going to go with, and he just popped into my head. Instead of me scrolling for 38 seconds like an idiot looking for a name, I just blurted out Tyler Bertuzzi. So for Slim Cliffy, I am Josh. We will be back Saturday morning. Great NHL scheduling, by the way. 13 games today, 2 tomorrow. So we will be back Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. I look forward to that. Make sure you smash that like button on your way out. We'll see you in Discord, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.